Hey everybody, I'm Mike from Mr. Lost Bike Shop in Bellingham, Washington. Today I'm riding the trails in the beautiful Chuckanut Mountains. I'm going to be highlighting the 2019 Fox GRIP2 damper and Fox GRIP2 forks. In this video, I'm going to be going over the benefits of the new GRIP2 damper because I really love this thing, and I'm also going to show you a very comprehensive, in-depth way to adjust all the adjustments that the GRIP2 damper has to offer, including air pressure, rebound, compression, and also progression. The GRIP2 damper is brand new for 2019 from Fox. These things are seriously amazing. I've been riding one for a few months now, and I'm totally in love with it. It's actually been my favorite fork that I've ever owned. What really sets the GRIP2 damper and the GRIP2 forks apart from everything else on the market is all the adjustability that you get. You can seriously dial this thing in exactly how you want it and get it to feel just totally perfect, and it makes everything just feel super nice. So what makes the GRIP2 damper different from all of the previous dampers from Fox and also some of the current dampers from other brands and from Fox right now? So the previous version of this damper was the high-speed, low-speed damper from Fox. With that fork, you would get one adjustment for rebound, but still you would get low-speed and high-speed compression adjustments. With the GRIP2 damper, you get high-speed and low-speed compression and high-speed and low-speed rebound, which really sets it apart and makes it super tunable and customizable. The other option with the Fox 36 is the Fit 4 damper, which is super popular for trail riders and pretty much everybody. It works really good, but the difference from the Fit 4 and the GRIP2 is that you're obviously going to have a lot more adjustments. The Fit 4 damper only has 3 modes, which is more of like a climb, trail, descend, and an adjustable low-speed compression for your open mode. You also still only have one rebound setting like the old high-speed, low-speed dampers. The Fit 4 damper is a great option for many riders, but today's video is just going to be about the GRIP2, and I will have a separate video differentiating the GRIP2 versus the Fit 4 and which one would work perfect for you. Included with these GRIP2 forks is a user manual, which will have some recommended settings to kind of get you on the trail, but I found that after a few months with this fork, I am pretty far away from those recommended settings, so I figured I would make a video and let you know how you can utilize all these settings to make the fork just feel super good and customized to you and your riding. So follow my steps in this video to get your fork feeling super dialed. Disclaimer, there are many different ways to adjust your suspension on your brand new forks, but this is just my preferred method of making sense of all these adjustments. The very first adjustment that you're going to make to your new fork is going to be your air pressure, and we're going to set your sag. And to do this, you're going to need a shock pump and a ruler. The manual recommends to run about 15 to 20% sag on your fork, and I did this right out of the box. I felt like it was a little bit stiff, and what I ended up settling on was right at about 30%. This might be different for different travels and different bike setups, but this is just what I figured out for myself. First, let's set up your sag. Sag is actually the distance between your seal and your O-ring when you have your weight pressed into it and settled on your suspension. The more pressure you have in your fork, the less sag you will run, and the less air that you have in your fork, the more sag you will run. When setting your sag, make sure that you have all your riding gear on, so if you do wear a backpack or a full-face helmet that's particularly heavy, make sure that you're wearing that so that your sag is going to be adjusted as accurate as possible and as realistic as possible, just like you were riding on the trail, exactly geared up how you would be. The first step of setting your sag is to put your O-ring all the way down. To get your initial sag reading, what you're going to want to do is stand over the bike and find a nice flat surface, and you're going to want to just put your hands in the grips and kind of lean over the fork and just let your weight settle into the fork. Just like that. Another way to do it is to lean against a wall with your saddle up and get in your riding position. But usually this is kind of a pain in the butt, and since most people that are going to be installing a Fox 36 on their bike are most likely going to be an aggressive rider, and when you're an aggressive rider riding steeper things, you are going to have more of your weight shifted over the front, so that's why I like to set up my sag by putting my weight right over the fork. It's easier and it's most likely going to be more accurate for the style of terrain and the style of riding that me and many people are going to be doing with their Fox 36. After putting your weight onto the fork, you're going to see that your O-ring is going to be somewhere right around here. And now you're going to want to measure the sag to see where you're at. So take your ruler and measure out the fork travel that you have from the top of the dust wiper. I have a 180 millimeter fork, so I'm gonna measure 180 millimeter and put the 0 mark right on the top of the dust wiper. And right there, the O-ring is sitting at about 49 millimeters. So now take a calculator and you're going to put in your sag measurement. Mine was at 49 millimeters, and then divide that by the fork travel of 180, and I get 0.27. So I am at 27% sag, which is very close to 30%, which a lot of people like to run. Again, these do recommend between a 15 and 20% sag, which will vary between you, your bike setup, and your riding style. It's always a good place to start at around 20 or 25% sag. That way, when you're on the trail, you can take a little bit of air pressure out with like a twig or something like that. I like to do that. I initially like to set up my new forks to be pretty firm with air pressure. That way I can take some air out on the side of the trail and experiment with lower pressures on the way down. So when you measure your sag, if you do measure less than 20%, then you're going to want to take a little bit of air out. And if you are above 30% and you're around 35, 40% or higher, then you're obviously going to want to add some air pressure in there. So fiddle with that air pressure in the air side of the fork until you get around 25, 20% sag, and you can start experimenting there. So I'm about 150 pounds fully geared up, and I run about 42 PSI so that my fork is at about 27% sag. And I have messed around with it a little bit for the past couple months since I've been on this fork, and I really like it set here, so I'm going to leave it at that 27% sag and call it perfect. Now that you have your air pressure set, let's get into adjusting the rebound and the compression. What you're going to want to do is devote a day or two to getting all this stuff set up. And what I recommend is riding a trail that you're very familiar with that has a good variety of features. Flowy sections, rough sections, steep sections, some pumpy sections, and also some jumps and drops. When you ride a trail with variety, it's going to make it easier to set up your fork to be ready to tackle any terrain that you come across. Before we start fiddling with knobs on your new fork, let's differentiate low and high speed impacts. A low speed impact is going to be when your fork hits something and it's moving rather slowly. And when I say slow, I don't mean that it's moving really slow. Low and high speed impacts are relative to each other. So these are going to be in real life situations when you're riding on the trail. Some common types of low speed impacts are pedaling, pumping through flowy sections, jumps that have a very smooth takeoff and very smooth landing, and also some types of G-outs. Some common forms of high-speed impacts are going to be a lot of small bump stuff where you're going through really rooty sections at high speeds. Also big roots and big rocks when you're riding in Canada or in California and you have a lot of rocks and you're riding at a very high speed. You're going to be hitting these things at a very high pace and a high speed. So that's a very high impact, which is the most common form. Another form of high-speed impact is going to be jumps, which are more so like a huck to flat, where the transition in the landing is going to be pretty flat. It's going to be a little bit more violent, might make your head go down a little bit. That's going to be a high-speed impact. And also many forms of rock rolls that are not very smooth at the bottom. This is going to be more of like a little bit more of a violent type of G-out, where at the bottom of the rock, you're kind of doing a little bit more of like a 75-degree angle to the ground, and you're getting bucked a little bit at the bottom. Instead of a traditional G-out where you're ending on like a road grade and it's a little bit more smooth. So those are going to be the common types of high and low speed impacts. Just to get things started when adjusting the rebound and compression, I would highly recommend these base settings. I would first recommend having at least 2 air tokens installed in your air chamber. I would also recommend having your compression knobs, both low and high speed compression, fully counterclockwise to be completely open. And then for the rebound, I would recommend having both the high and low speed rebound set right in the middle setting. Now let's dive into these adjustments in more detail.
1, 2, 3, jump!
All right, now let's start adjusting the rebound on the GRIP2 damper. I just wanted to start by saying that having the ability to independently adjust the high and low speed rebound on the new GRIP2 damper is what really sets these things apart from every other fork on the market. By having both high and low speed rebound, you can make your bike feel like a super lively and light trail bike, make it really active and poppy off of small jumps, and get this thing airborne all over the trail and have a bunch of fun. But then you can slow down your high speed rebound so that when you jump off of something and land in a big field of roots and rocks, you can slow down the rebound so the bike doesn't feel like it wants to just jump right off the ground again. When you get into those situations, you're gonna want a whole bunch of grip, and by having that high speed rebound dialed in, you're going to be able to just jump off of stuff, land in the rough things, and feel super composed, and then you can pop your way out of it at the end into the next smooth section. If you typically rely on your suspension to do most of the work on the trail, then a slower rebound will benefit you. But if you're like me and like to use your whole body to absorb impacts and pump your way through the trail and jump off of everything you possibly can, then a faster rebound will help the bike stay higher in its travel and feel much more lively. In general, slow rebound means sticks to the ground with tons of traction, and high rebound means jumping off of everything that you possibly can. And this is why I love my GRIP2 fork so much, because you can have the best of both worlds, which I really enjoy. To adjust your rebound, first pull off the cap, which is going to be protecting the rebound knobs. Put that in a safe place where you won't lose it. Then turn your low speed rebound fully closed, which is completely clockwise, and then turn your high speed rebound fully closed, which is completely clockwise. The GRIP2 damper has 9 clicks of both high and low speed rebound, and since we want to set this right in the middle to begin, we're going to put this at about 5 clicks. Now that we have the low speed rebound set, we'll move on to the high speed rebound and set that to 5 clicks as well. And then, of course, replace your cap so that it doesn't get hit by anything on the trail. When I first got my fork, I did this exact same thing. I set my rebound right in the middle on both high and low speed rebound and took this thing out for a ride. And the first thing that I felt right off the bat pretty much was that the fork felt like it was really glued to the ground and I had a ton of traction, but I do want my bike to be a little bit more lively just for personal preference, and I felt like I couldn't really pop off of all the little natural jumps that were on the trail. So what I did is I turned my low speed rebound counterclockwise and opened up the rebound a little bit to make it a lot faster. I did this by a couple clicks at a time, and immediately I figured out that the bike just became much more lively and I was able to kind of stay off the ground a little bit more and also stay up higher in my ride height, and I was able to carry my speed a little bit better too. Then I wanted to focus on how I wanted my high speed rebound to feel. So what I did is I went into the next trail, which is going to be a little bit steeper, a little bit more rough, really rooty and really rocky. And so what I wanted my bike to do in these high-speed impact situations is I wanted it to slow down so it could really stay composed and have more grip. So what I did is I actually rode through that rooty section and I felt like it was staying pretty high in the travel. It wasn't as soft and supple, it wasn't sucking up all those bumps and staying kind of in that mid-stroke to kind of grab every single root and rock. So what I did is I dialed in my high-speed rebound. I turned the knob clockwise to make it slower so that my bike was really playful and active on flowy stuff and pedaling and also just being able to jump off of things. But then when I was landing into those rough sections, my high-speed rebound would take over in those high-speed impacts, and then the fork was much slower, felt much more composed, and I could really stick to the ground and I didn't feel like the bike just wanted to like jump off of every little rock and whatnot. Now that you got your bike out on the trail and you're trying to figure out your rebound, what you're going to want to feel for in your fork is if you feel like you're getting kind of sore in the arms or if you're getting bounced around a lot. Now, if you feel like you're getting kind of sore in the arms, most likely what's going on is that your rebound is too slow and you have too many clicks clockwise. So what's happening is as you're hitting roots and rocks, your fork isn't extending fast enough to get ready for the next hit, for the next root or the next rock. So if that's the case, take out some clicks of rebound and it should feel like your fork is extending quick enough to get ready for those hits one after another. So if you feel like you're getting thrown around the trail or you're bouncing off of everything and you're not really stuck to the ground, you don't have as much traction as you wish that you would, then you're going to want to add some clicks in either the low or high speed depending on your terrain. So what that's going to do is it's going to slow the fork down, so the fork is going to suck everything up a little bit better instead of just bouncing off of it. So you're going to want to add some clicks of rebound and turn that rebound clockwise in either the high or low speed setting of the rebound depending on the situation. So if you are bouncing off of roots and you're going really fast, so you're probably gonna wanna add some clicks of low speed rebound onto your fork. What that's gonna do is it's gonna slow the fork down, so when you smack into something, it's not just trying to extend really quick and bounce you right off. What's gonna happen is it's gonna suck it up underneath you and it's gonna stay packed up a little bit, so it's really gonna absorb that impact rather than just immediately extending out. And also, if you feel like your bike is not as playful as you'd like, turn that low speed rebound counterclockwise, and what you're going to do is make the fork faster, and you should be able to bounce and pop off of things a little bit easier. So I'm gonna keep riding this trail and keep figuring things out. Right now I'm at the bottom of about a 6-foot drop, and it's pretty much a huck to flat. Especially if you go kind of fast, you will literally land on flat ground. So depending on the conditions and how fast you come off of this thing, this is where the high speed rebound adjustment on the GRIP2 damper is really gonna come in handy. When I land this thing to flat, my bike is not gonna feel like it wants to bounce into the next corner up here. So I'm gonna come off of this thing, and with my high speed rebound set pretty slow, I'm going to stick to the ground. My bike is not gonna wanna extend as fast, and I'm gonna roll smoothly out of here and control my speed into the next weird section. Now watch me land pretty much to flat. And you'll notice that I don't bounce off the landing, but instead I'm staying sort of right in the middle of the travel, and I'm sucking up all those little bumps that are at the bottom of this drop and landing smooth and rolling away smooth. By having my low speed rebound set pretty fast, I'm able to do this double through these trees, which doesn't even have a lip. There's just this tiny mound of dirt that I'm able to pop off. And this right here is my favorite clip of the day. It shows a little rooty section right before another root with some dirt filled in, and you can see me pump through this rooty section and then pop off of that root, and this turns out to be a really smooth maneuver thanks to that GRIP2 damper. Unlike with Rebound, I really like to start tuning my fork's compression settings while they are fully open, or fully counterclockwise. When the compression circuit is fully open, your damper will be completely unrestricted, which makes the fork feel very sensitive and plush. Now this is either a good or bad thing depending on your riding style and terrain, so let's look at how to adjust the compression. Just like the previous model of the high-speed, low-speed damper, which came in the previous models of the Fox 36, the GRIP2 damper has an independently adjustable high and low-speed compression. Compression is actually really hard to explain how it works, but let's put it in simple terms. If you have your compression knob set fully clockwise, it's going to be in its firmest position. Since these new GRIP2 dampers have independent settings for both high and low-speed compression, you're really going to be able to dial in how supportive your fork feels on both high and low-speed impacts. This is actually the reason that I like to start by adjusting rebound and air pressure before diving into the compression settings, because it is kind of confusing. So what I really like to do is get that part of the fork figured out and then start looking at compression. Let's just put it this way. If you're on a flow trail and you're pumping through some rollers to get some speed for the next jump, that's gonna be a low speed impact. You're gonna want some low speed compression so that you're supported while you're pumping. You wanna stay higher in your travel and stiffen the fork up so that when you pump through, you're not gonna be wasting your energy and diving into your fork's travel. That way you're gonna stay a little bit higher up in your travel. Your fork is gonna feel a lot more firm, a little bit more rigid. You're really gonna be able to carry your speed through and not waste your energy diving into the fork suspension. Where high-speed compression really comes into play is when you start really riding aggressively, or if you just live in a really, really rough and rocky and rooty terrain like Canada or California or something like that. On average rides, you might find like you're riding through a lot of really rough stuff, and you feel like when you get into those rough spots, you're really diving into your suspension, or also when you're going into corners at high speeds and you're hitting your brakes and you feel like you're diving over your front end into the corner. You don't really want to do that, and you want to stay a little bit higher in your travel, a little bit more supported. So you're going to want to have some high-speed compression in those scenarios so that you have some support from your fork at the mid-stroke and at the top of the stroke, so that you don't feel like you're falling over the front end when you're really diving in the corners and riding through rough sections. Another thing that I like about having independently controlled high-speed compression is, let's just say I build a new jump and I'm guinea pigging this thing for the first time, and I don't know if I'm going to overshoot it or not. Let's just say I do overshoot the jump and I land flat, that fork having high-speed compression dialed in is going to be more supported, and when I land right to flat, I'm not going to feel like I'm going to go right over the bars or smack myself into my stem. I'm going to feel a little bit more upright in my travel, and it's just going to stiffen up more, and I should feel like I'm landing a little bit more on a firm cushion. All right, now that you've got your air pressure and your rebound set up, and you have your high and low speed compression knobs turned fully counterclockwise and fully open, let's hit the trail and start figuring out your compression settings.
1, 2, 3, do it!
Here's a great example of low speed compression. This is a pretty flat section of trail, and to keep my speed up, I'm going to be pumping my bike through every little divot possible. And since this is a low speed impact, having some low speed compression set on the fork is going to mean less energy wasted compressing my fork and more energy going into the ground, pumping my way through, making me go faster. Braking bumps are a great example of a high speed compression. You can see me going through some right here, but I am staying up high in my travel. If I was going low in my travel with these and blowing through my travel, I would add some clicks of compression. Here's another great example of a low-speed compression where I pop off of this ridge and land down in the bottom of this pretty smooth G-out, and right here, you can see that I blew through my travel, and if I had a little bit of low-speed compression, I would have stayed more upright and supported so I don't lose as much energy and can put more into the trail and pump my way into the next section. Here we are right at the bottom of the trail, and this section right here shows all of the forks adjustments working together at once. There's a long high-speed run-in with a bunch of chatter at the bottom, which the fork just soaks up, then a little bump that you can pop off into a G-out, and then boost your way out of it, landing to flat. With my high-speed compression set soft, I'm able to soak up all these bumps at the bottom, and with my low-speed rebound set fast, I'm able to jump my way in and out this G-out with tons of pop. And with my high-speed rebound set slow, I'm able to land the suck to flat smooth without bouncing off the ground. So now I'm back at the shop to go over the last piece of the fork adjustment puzzle. Progression. Progression refers to the rate at which your air spring compresses. This is not adjustable on coil shocks or coil forks. This is only adjustable on air forks and air shocks, which is actually a pretty amazing thing. So if we have your forks travel right here, this is fully extended, this is bottomed out. If you have your fork set really progressive, it's going to be easy off the top of the stroke right here, but then really hard to squeeze that last bit. A coil fork and shock is going to be completely linear, so it's going to be just as easy at the top of the stroke as it is on the bottom of the stroke. Some people do prefer the feeling of linear suspension, but personally, I like my suspension to be pretty progressive. When you're hitting big drops, big jumps, and bombing through rough sections, it's going to be almost impossible to feel your fork bottom out. When it's really progressive, it's going to be really soft off the top of the stroke and feel really nice over real small chattery things and have really good small bump sensitivity. But then when you get in that bottom of the travel on a big jump or a drop or a really high speed rough section, you're not really going to be able to feel your fork bottoming out because it's going to be really resistant to bottoming out. Adjusting your fork's compression is actually pretty easy by use of these little air tokens. A token, also known as an air volume reducer, is going to basically take up space in the chamber of your air spring on your fork or shock. And what this is going to do is create less volume, so it's going to be harder to compress at that end of that stroke. And these are actually really easy to install. What you do is you remove all of the air out of your air spring, number one, don't forget that, and then you just take off the top cap of your fork. These guys simply snap onto the bottom of the air spring cap, and these are available in different sizes so that you can really fine-tune how progressive your fork is. And depending on the travel of your fork, you can add up to 8 tokens to make your fork super progressive. Check with your Fox user's manual to see the maximum amount of tokens that you can add depending on your travel. The user manual will also tell you how many tokens come pre-installed from the factory in your fork. Since I have a 180mm fork, mine came with 0 tokens straight from the factory. They do this in the 180 and 170mm forks because since they are a bigger fork, you may not need it to be as progressive since you have that extra travel. Now the reason why I said that I'd recommend starting with 2 tokens as a base setting in your fork no matter what is because I rode this thing with the 0 tokens in it for the first few weeks, and I couldn't really dial everything in. It felt a little stiff and I couldn't bottom the fork out. So I was having trouble fine-tuning all of my adjustments. But after realizing that I had 0 tokens installed in my fork from the factory, I went ahead and installed 2, and right off the bat it was a complete night and day difference. The fork was way more supple off the top of the stroke, and technically while it should have been harder to bottom out, it actually became easier to reach that end of the stroke, meaning I could kind of fine-tune my compression adjustments. The reason for this is because when you have a very large air spring and you add tokens, you're going to reduce the air volume inside of there. When you have less air, it's going to be easier for the fork to compress off the top of the stroke, which I noticed immediately that my small bump sensitivity went way up and it felt awesome. And even though I technically made my air spring more progressive, I was able to reach the top of that stroke a lot easier, and I could almost get my fork to bottom out a little bit easier. Again, since I have less air volume, I have less overall air, making it easier to compress, and the fork just felt way better. And even though I can add up to 5 tokens into my fork, I'm gonna leave it there because it feels perfect. I don't want it to be any more progressive. I don't want the fork to change one bit from how it feels right now. Now keep in mind that when you're adding tokens, you're affecting the size of the air chamber, so you will have to readjust your air pressure to readjust your sag. I have a 180mm fork, and with 0 tokens installed, I had about 55 to 60 PSI in there, but then when I put 2 tokens in it and reduced my air volume, I went down to about 47 PSI. The less air volume, the less air pressure, and the more sensitive your fork is. In a nutshell, the less tokens that you have in your fork, the more linear that your suspension is going to feel, and the more tokens that you have, the more progressive it's going to be, and harder to compress that last bit of travel. When you do change the progression of your fork, it might throw off all of your adjustments just by a little bit. So this is all part of the fine-tuning process. After you add or remove tokens, reset your air pressure to achieve your preferred amount of sag, and go hit the trails again. See how it feels, see if you like it, see if you don't like it, and see how the rebound and the compression feels. Alright, now there you have it, a pretty comprehensive and in-depth guide on all the adjustments and settings on the Fox GRIP2 damper and Fox GRIP2 forks. If I missed anything or you guys have any questions on Fox forks, shocks, or seat posts, feel free to drop those in the comments below, and I'll be sure to answer everybody's questions as quick as I can. And if you guys have any other questions on setting up any other fork that you might have, drop those in the comments as well, and I'll answer those questions for you too. If you're interested in purchasing a Fox fork from us to either upgrade your current bike or install on a new bike build, I will leave the link to the Fox forks below in the description to our web store, where you can order one of these guys and we'll ship it right to your door. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. And if you really like this video, make sure that you subscribe to our channel and hit that little bell notification so that you're notified every time we put up a new video. And last but not least, I just wanted to say thanks to everybody for all the love that we've been given on our YouTube channel, and we've only got a couple of videos up, and I'm just super excited to grow this channel and grow this whole community, and I'm really looking forward to getting phone calls and emails and orders from customers, and I just love helping people with either upgrades or new bike builds. So if you guys got questions on bike tech, I'm the guy to talk to. Just give us a call at the shop, shoot us an email, or drop a comment below, and I'll be super happy to help you. And until next time, happy trails. It's very doable. It sucks. To properly get your suspension dialed in, you're gonna wanna put your bike up on this log hanging through the woods, and then tiptoe your way down it and contemplate jumping off the end. But you're gonna wuss out right about here and give up because it's far too scary. Once you do that, your suspension should be dialed and you're ready to ride off of any logs that you wish.